training load tripled. He had them do time trials at the end of each 2-week block, and their time trial performance went into the tank when they were overtraining. Guess what also happened? He also had them ride at a kind of lowish intensity in a test workout in each of those 2 training blocks, and perception of effort at that easy pace spiked when they were overtraining. So these guys didn't ever have to do a race when they were overtraining to know that they were overtraining. They could have, in a warm-up, diagnosed, if they're just listening to their bodies, that they're off track. It's like if you got 5 days in a row, except in those, if you know what you're doing, you can overreach a little bit. But generally, like if you have 5 days in a row and you're like, I'm kind of flat, I know I need to train even more. It's like, it's so dumb, but I've done it, and elite runners do it, and it's easy to rationalize your way through that basic mistake. So that's the training piece. Another technique that you can use is what I call bracing yourself. Who here's been to the dentist before? Okay, I thought so. So when I go to the dentist, before I go to the dentist, I brace myself. I tell myself, this is going to suck. This is going to be painful. And then I go to the dentist, and it sucks and it's painful, but it's never worse than I braced for. If I brace myself for it, it's never worse than I expected it to be. Guess what? This is actually good psychology, not just for going to the dentist, but for being any sort of endurance racer as well. Because perception of effort, there are actually 2 layers to it. Layer 1 is the raw physical perception, how you feel. Layer number 2 is actually how you feel relative to how you expected to feel. So anyone who's run once before, a race before, you have expectations that you bring into the next race in the same. That's how you get good at pacing. That experience is captured. So say you're a 10K person, and you're going to run a 10K PR, and you get 5K into it, and you feel lousy-ish, but like, okay, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Halfway through a 10K, if you're going for a PR and you're experienced, you should feel kind of lousy-ish. But guess what? If based on your experience, you feel a little worse than you expected to, you could tank at that point, because there's going to be a little bit of a panic response. It's like, no, I wasn't ready for this. Like I was ready for this much, but this is just that much more. So there's kind of an emotional valence to perception of effort that you need to be prepared for. How you prepare for that is to expect every race to be the hardest race you've ever done. You can't be disappointed that way, because every now and then, it's a very dangerous thing, but you have those magical races, right? Where you open up the black box that you never know quite what is inside until it's open, and you just float, right? It's just like one of those races, I don't even remember it. I just PR'd, I won, I got a ribbon, and then you sort of hope that happens again and again and again, but that's a thrice in a lifetime. I've been running since I was 11, folks. It's happened, this many times. Not many, but most of the time you have to expect the worst. And there was actually, this is kind of experimentally proven as well. There's a Canadian psychologist with a Russian name. These folks kind of move around. I don't know, maybe there's no actual Russian exercise psychologist as well. Her name is Elena Ivanova, and she took a bunch of mostly sedentary women, and she put them through something that's known as acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a form of behavioral psychology. Acceptance and commitment therapy basically means expecting it to suck or bracing yourself, and you can use it for anything. It's mostly used to help people overcome traumatic experiences and stuff. But it's a way of just saying, hey, this is part of reality, and I need to expect this sort of discomfort or stress to happen again in the future. If you sort of accept and commit to that reality, it helps you get through it. So this psychologist tried this form of behavioral psychology in an exercise context. So she had mostly sedentary women do a high-intensity run, I think probably a stationary bike ride to exhaustion, before and after the therapy. And this is therapy, folks, not training. And after this acceptance and commitment therapy, their time to exhaustion increased by 55%. Just by having them basically brace themselves and accept, guess what? It's exercise. It's going to hurt. If we say don't stop until you can't turn the pedal another time, it's going to suck somewhere before that happens. But if you accept that that's going to be the case, more power to you. And in this book, you would think again, well, that's a no-brainer. But there are actually a lot of sports psychologists out there who will encourage athletes to visualize the perfect race, right? Imagine yourself, it's like you've never felt stronger. You're fit and alive. Everything's going your way. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. And there are good examples of, who remembers the 2009 NCAA cross country championship? Jenny Behringer, the implosion. Expected to crush everyone, the greatest collegiate runner, female runner of all time, and a prohibitive favorite to win by a mile, and collapses halfway through the race. Nothing physically wrong with her whatsoever. She was fine. She actually got up, finished the race, and was passing people by the dozen at the end, mortified. She had no idea what had happened. What had happened was she had failed to brace herself. That's how powerful this is. This woman was a world champion 18 months later. It wasn't physical. She was as good as she thought she was, but she thought she was too good for that one race. Did not brace herself. The thing is, imagine this. Imagine the toughest moment of the toughest race you've ever done. Imagine you're walking up the stairs at home with a load of laundry, and suddenly you start to feel that way, out of the blue. You would think you were dying. It's that bad, folks. This is intense, what we put ourselves through. If you're not ready for it, you're doomed. So, of course, we all know we're about to run a race when we do. I've never had, someone, ring a cowbell over my head in the middle of the night, yank me out of bed, throw shoes on me, and make me run a marathon. That hasn't happened yet. So we know we're going to run a race, but
that sounds like a great experience.
Yeah. Let's talk. But so there are levels of readiness, and so yeah, expect every race you do. It's not negative thinking. Before Mo Farah, before he ran the London Marathon, he did an interview. He said, "This is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done." Now, if you don't know anything, you might think, "Oh, that's kind of negative." No, it isn't. The dude's bracing himself. He can't be disappointed that in that case. It can't be harder than he expected to be, and that's actually performance. It's going to benefit his performance when it actually is harder than even he expected. And it was, too. He had a terrible race. Okay, these aren't panaceas, folks. Okay, another one is called reframing, and it's a lot of psychology. My mom's a psychologist. She taught me this one just as an adolescent. So just trying to tame the asshole in her son. She taught me about reframing. Reframing is when you take the same reality and put a different frame around that picture. Basically, you don't. It's different from denial. Denial is you see black and you call it white. You see white, you call it black. Reframing is you see what's there, but you just choose a more helpful way to interpret what you see. And this works very well. Who here kind of is susceptible to pre-race nerves? Gets a little bit of the jitters before a race. Yeah, many of us, some of us get it kind of real bad. Reframing is very helpful in that regard. In sort of outside the exercise context, there have been some studies with reframing. Well, what they do is they take some people and in another life, I want to be a psychologist. So they'll take people and they will force them to do a public speaking experiment or some kind of math test where the results will be made public. So anything where they could induce anxiety before they have to perform. And what they'll tell these people is, in one circumstance, they'll just throw them to the lions. Okay, you're on stage, go, how do you do? And on another circumstance, they say, before you get on that stage, before you do the math test, take the anxiety you're feeling now and call it excitement. It's not anxiety, it's excitement. Guess what? Physiologically, if you were to measure all of the racing heart rate, the sweaty palms, there's no difference. So you're not lying. It's not denial, you're just reframing. It's like, I am not scared, I am excited. Guess what? Math scores go up, ratings on the performance of the public speaking performances go up, so people perform better. Same people, no training, they're just told to reframe what's about to happen. And there is actually, okay, those aren't exercise experiments, but I think it works in exercise as well in racing competition because we do know that anxiety increases perceived effort. So if you're actually racing in an anxious state at the same pace,